Hello, Don. How are you doing today?
I'm extremely well, thank you.
Great. So before we start, Don, do you have a favorite quote, something that motivates you, inspires you, you would like to share with our audience?
Um, I do, and this is something that many years ago, early in my career, I remember being pulled into my one of my boss's office, and as I sat there, and I can't even remember what I was being asked to do. I clearly wasn't paying attention because what I saw behind him was a postcard, and that postcard said, "What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?" And that was the moment that I knew I actually had to leave the business I was working in and set up my own agency.
Hmm. That is quite interesting. That's one of the things which I've experienced myself. We were sitting in a classroom, and one of our professors was saying, "What a student asked, sir, I don't have any passion. I don't know what to do with my life." And that is exactly what the professor said. What would you do if if you can't fail, or if have everything, unlimited money, capital, time? What you want to do? And that's how we figured it out. So I totally understand how deep this question could go when, put in front of you. Great. So Don, imagine this then. We are in a room full of ambitious founders and early stage builders, right? No one knows you personally or your name, and you've got the mic and the stage. You've got few minutes to introduce, not with your title or where you work, but with stories that explains the people in the room why they should trust and hear you for the next 1 hour. What would be your story?
I love that question. It's really wonderful. My response would be several things. Firstly, that you won't have ever spoken to somebody who is able to command a room and speak about the $12 trillion experience economy as I am about to do. Someone who knows about storytelling, knows about culture, and knows about relevance when it comes to finding ways to sell things. I would say to the room that I have experience of building and walking away from multiple businesses and how that has impacted my own career progression and my ambition, and how along the way I have found my purpose. And I would lastly tell them that I have superpowers that they also have standing in front of me today that they perhaps don't realize, but that which we can all unlock.
Indeed, indeed. And knowing when to stop or when to quit is one of the superpowers, because if you understand where you can add more value, or if you understand which space on this earth will, you know, make you the best possible person to be in that space, time, and location, so that you can add the maximum value um, n- yeah, at that particular point of time, that is already a winning situation for the individual being in that situation. So Don, let me ask you this then. How Okay, was quitting something you planned strategically after looking at that uh, card, or was it more of an emotional decision? And the reason I'm asking you this is because a lot of founders who are listening to the show, um, most of them, and specifically from the stats which we have gathered, we have found out that 28% of people who are working in their 9 to 5 jobs right now, they're trying really, really hard to get into founder space. And the reason they're trying to do that is because they do not like or do not love what they're doing right now. They have a different mindset, they have a different goal in their life. What's what was is like for you when you made that decision to?
So when I quit my I'm going to call it my 9 to 5, my safe job,
Mhm,
that
mhm,
was incredibly hard because I come from a very traditional culture with a family that, I was brought up understanding that working 9 to 5 in a job is what you did. I was paid very well. I was valued. I had very obvious career progression set out before me. I had no reason to not want to go. And also in an industry that I loved, right? So I had no reason to say, I need to change. But I had, for many, many years, also had a desire to work for myself in some way. And my first experience of quitting was emotional. There were lots and lots of practicalities about it, including needing to pay my rent and that kind of thing. And the moment I had to tell my then boss was I, beyond emotionally hard, like just excruciating. However, I also remember the moment I did it, I went into the best way to describe it is I went into free fall so I could see myself in free fall. And in that moment, I knew that in a sense I was free and that I literally now had to move on and set up my marketing agency. So I left a marketing agency being very well paid. And then I thought, hey, why don't I just set up my own marketing agency? Which is then the business that after 8 years, I quit as well.
Mm. And and I already know that you have built commercially successful businesses, and you have realized at some point that, okay, if you could do these for commercial businesses, why not for yourself, right? And that makes more sense now. But were there any delays when you're making this decision? And I'm asking you this because these are the burning question I receive from different social media platforms, from different people who are trying to get into the founder space. Looking back, do you think, was there any kind of fear of judgment or financial loss? Does any of that was playing any role in delaying your decision, or was it like instant and you took it? And then what signs do you now recognize that others might ignore when it's time to move on?
It's great. So yes, immense pressure. So both when I left my safe job and then when I decided to move on from building my commercially successful marketing agency in um, different pressures, but both pressures easily described as quite traditional and obvious pressures. So the pressure of family, sometimes the societal pressure of, but you're doing really well. Why would you quit? Why would you X, Y, and Z? Why would you, make it harder for yourself? And I think that is very hard to have an answer to because you don't know. Like all you know is that you absolutely have to give it a shot. Which of course is an emotional response. And so when you're trying to respond to what is a very fair and logical question, and you give an emotional response, that can be met with some confusion. But I would say they were absolutely the pressures in both scenarios that I felt. Um, what was the second part of your question just then?
The second part was around, did did you think, looking back, there was any kind of signs, do you recognize now, that other people might ignore when it's time to move on?
Mm. Um, yes, I mean, for me personally, I I grew up somewhere in my mind believing I would work for myself. I actually thought I was going to go off to the circus and be a dancer on the back of a horse going round. And I'd work for myself, but that's what I would do. And although that's not what I do, some could argue working in entertainment is sometimes like that. But the the feelings I have are that I carry are when I can't stop thinking about that thing. And when I also believe that I have maximized how I can service either that business or those people, or the other thing that I know many of us uh, can find is a huge trigger is when actually you just get annoyed about everything in your job all day, every day. And I think that that is a sure sign that you need to move on. I'm lucky that didn't happen with me, but it absolutely does happen.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So moving on to the next um, part, then the three-part learning which you have shared initially. Once you have made the decision, now you had to figure out like what you want to do. What is, finding your real purpose, right? After leaving a successful business, a job which protected you from all sort of like these uncomfortable surroundings a founder's life is surrounded by, how did you rediscover your sense of purpose? Do you believe purpose finds you through action, or is it something you consciously design?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Um, so I am very purpose driven. So for context, I work in the experience economy, specifically in entertainment, experiences, live events. And that comes from a whole childhood of being a performer and then not being a performer, but wanting to work in the industry. So my my foundation for purpose is that I have to work within experiences. I happen to be very lucky that the experience economy is exploding. So there's some incredible data around the value, the trillions of dollars that the experience economy is set to be valued at. Created my first marketing agency. Even the terminology around experience economy didn't exist, and we weren't really sure about the true value of it. So my purpose became that I had a marketing agency that worked in what I felt was my purpose. So that, the almost like quite a macro purpose. Whilst building that agency, whilst I enjoyed it, I think I lost my personal purpose. So I sort of, yes, it was in an industry I loved, but I'd also achieved this idea of building something myself. So when I decided to walk away from it, all I knew was I can create businesses that are commercially successful in an industry that I love, but I no longer understood how to actually work out what I wanted to do. So I began consulting, which was wonderful and, sort of scratched the itch, so to speak. And I picked up some incredible clients along the way, like the Friends experience or Squid Game experience. But really narrowing down my purpose was something that I've spent thousands of pounds on with coaches, and that can work. But I have to tell you, for me, there was also the need for time. So when I closed my business, it was just before COVID. The idea of trying to really work out my purpose in a period of time when the whole experience had been closed was naive. And actually, I really struggled with that. Like I had anxiety around the fact that I didn't know what I wanted to do. That was really hard. But as the industry came back to life, actually what happened was it came back as a very different jigsaw to when we left it pre-COVID. And when that jigsaw began to settle, I could actually see the gaps, and then I was able to overlay my passions and what I'm really good at with those gaps in that jigsaw, which ultimately meant that I'm able to be really clear about my purpose in my new business.
Interesting. And but you understand yourself very well, and you have gone through all these experiences. What recommendation do you have for people who, let's say, for example, freshly graduated from universities, or they haven't got any experience or any any work experience or any other kind of skills commercially used? What would what should how should they proceed to understand or find their purpose in life? Or what practical steps can someone take today to realign their past, their work, and their deeper values to find the purpose?
I think I think firstly that um, for some people, they will acknowledge that their purpose is to make X amount of pounds or dollars. And I say, go for it. Because if that's really if you genuinely believe that your purpose is only financially driven, knock yourself out. However, I actually believe there is a much bigger group of professionals and founders who believe that they want the opportunity to earn X amount of money, to exit, to, or just, create a very livable lifestyle for themselves. But, but they trust that that will come by at first defining this sense of purpose. And that's the bracket I would put myself in. I would say to early stage or anyone beginning to work on their business vision, or indeed, as you pointed out, a graduate or somebody new, I would say explore. And I don't mean explore as in, just go try everything. I actually mean maybe explore yourself and understand whether you enjoy reading, whether you enjoy culturally spending times at exhibitions, whether it's the theatre for you. But what I would say is there's something really interesting about momentum and creating momentum that helps us think and helps our brain unlock really great questions for ourselves. Those moments of time where like COVID, when I, was creating anxiety for myself because I couldn't answer this idea of what do I want to do? What do I want to do? It was because, we couldn't go anywhere. So that sense, I couldn't create a sense of motion. So for me, I used to be a dancer. Motion for me is probably being in a dance studio, or sometimes it's walking the dog. But there's quite a lot of science around that idea of motion and how it can help us ask questions. And when we really ask those questions, if we give ourselves honest answers, we can very slowly begin to define our purpose. I would also say you can't rush your purpose. So what can initially feel like, oh, I've got the eureka moment. This is the idea. You've got to be then prepared to work on it for 6 months, and it maybe not come to anything. And that's a process you go through when you're building a startup in terms of, seeking feedback, testimonials, test, learn, test, learn. Just because you think it's a great idea doesn't mean it actually is. And that's slightly different.
Interesting. So let's say you figured out what if you wanna quit what you're doing, and then you figured out your purpose. Let's say you reach to the third base of your life where you wanna do something about it. Now you understand yourself. You understand what purpose you want to fill. What are the next steps in a founder's life they have to take? So one of the questions we receive quite a lot is, there is nothing which is not built in the founder's world. If you go into a new product category, for example, if you want to uh, manufacture a gadget, somebody has already did it. If you want to manufacture a car, somebody has already did it. If you want to manufacture a mic, which we are using, somebody already have did it. So it's very difficult to figure out what to build, what to create, where to create the value so that they can sell it and then convert it into a business. And understanding purpose is one thing, but creating a business is different. How do you fill this bridge? How do you map things out when you understand one side of it and you have no clue what is standing other side of this bridge?
Yes. I think the first point is in answer, because it's very interesting that you make reference to everything is built. And of course, you're absolutely right. Um, but I also, because I operate generally in a sales and marketing world, I actually would counter that by saying that you as the founder are unique. And uh, do you have resilience? Do you have grit? This idea that people ultimately buy people. So I'm not talking about selling to the consumer in this scenario. What I'm talking about is that moment when you set up, when you sit at your desk on day one with a head full of ideas, and you're like, oh, okay, like this is happening. The best thing you have is you. And yes, I know there's lots of writing around, find your cheerleaders, have a support network, and I absolutely agree with that. But actually, most of this is on you. So I was asked fairly recently by a friend, like, why do you keep going? Like, why the speed? Why work so hard? Why are you pushing so hard? And I made the point that nobody is coming to save me. So nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save the next founder. So if you genuinely believe in the idea that you have, then you owe it to yourself to take action. And don't be surprised if it's hard, because it really will be, because you have to be your own cheerleader. This isn't about anybody else standing at the sidelines going, oh, you're brilliant, go, go, because they might not. They might come along much later on and go, oh, I always believed in you. And you'd be thinking, I wish you'd have said that at the beginning. But people don't. So you be you, people by people, make that your absolute core. Um, and yeah, I think I would start there. And remember, unless you take action, like, nobody's coming to save you.
Mm. Yeah, that is so true, and you just have to figure it out by going on to the bridge, Either the bridge could break and you just fell into the river and flow with it, or the bridge is solid and you can cross it, and maybe you can build a bridge for other people and, help them out. Yeah, that's fairly fair enough. How do you how do you balance the persistence with self-care, especially in a culture that glorifies hustle? Because, in founders world, hustling is considered as something like a badge. So if you ask somebody if that person or team of people are founders and they're hustling through something, that is considered, you know that is glorified in a way that they're doing something which could change the world. How do you balance that persistence and the self-care? Because I've seen people in hackathon not going home, consistently working for 36 hours just to win the hackathon and potentially get a meeting with the investors. I've seen people traveling 10, 20 hours to the other part of the world to be just in front of some investors for like 30 seconds. And all that comes to with a cost, because ultimately, if you don't get the results what you're looking for or what you're working on, this is kind of like a learning. I don't want to call it like wasted, but again, you have to balance it at some point, right?
You do. And you're talking to someone who left her honeymoon in Australia to travel back to present a pitch for a major theatre producer in the West End, a pitch that she was already told it was unlikely her agency would win because of who she was up against, but they were very keen to meet with her. And I came home 48 hours from my honeymoon and flew back again. So I think the question, and I didn't win, but they had already told me I wouldn't win, but I couldn't let the opportunity go. However, and that is hustle, right? There's no doubt about it, right? That's an expensive hustle. Both expensive literally and expensive for a relationship. Um, but what I would say, and I work in an industry that not only rewards hustle for founders, but also rewards late nights. So working in experiences, you work your traditional 9 to 5, and then generally speaking, there's an event that you need to be seen at. What I would say about the hustle is that I know how much of a hustle or a gamble I am prepared to make, and that I don't believe in the short-term win. And I think that if you think that, one, I don't know, one meeting could change your life, but actually, it could all that there are also scenarios that says it was not worth that particular hustle. And that's down to the individual to absolutely decide. Work consistently hard 6 out of 7 days a week, consistently.
Hmm.
So I rarely take fancy holidays. I spend as much time with my family as I can. I'm as present as that for them as I can, and I'm as present and as consistent for growing my business as I can be. My reward for that is that every week I move forwards a little bit more. What I'm not expecting is that next week magic might happen and something huge will just change my life, because that's just whimsical, right? They're the things we see on social media, and you can start to feel quite jealous about, and you wonder, when is it my turn? But you don't worry about that. Be consistent. Keep your head down and be consistent. And remember that through that consistency, there is also joy. Joy through your work, joy with your friendships, joy with your family, wherever you find that joy, but let it be joyful doing the work you're doing.
Indeed, indeed, and there's nothing like overnight success, anyways. I mean, I can share my experience. I've been working in tech for like around 20 years now, and just a couple of months back, I was sitting with my girlfriend, and she said to me, like, Ash, we have a local grocery store called Tesco's in UK, right? And what we used to do is we always used to create these notes. There's an app on the iPhone called Notes where we share the groceries which we want to buy, right? And then it doesn't sync because she used to update it, and then I used to go to the Tesco's, bring it, and then she's like, "Oh, you forgot the coriander. Oh, you forgot the milk." And I was like, "But it wasn't there in the list." And I was like, "But yes, it is. Look at this. Look at my phone." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is not helping out." And just out of that conversation, I created an app, and I added a small feature in it where you can actually add all of your loyalty cards in it. Uh, Long story short, after we released the app, we got like 5 or 6 1-star rating on that. It's like terrible, amazingly bad app. You cannot have a bad app than this in the world, right? And for some reason, a lot of Italian people started downloading it. Now, I was a little bit confused, like why these Italian people are downloading it. I primarily released it for people in UK. And it turned out that because in the app with barcodes, I also released QR codes and then PDF 412, which is the format they are looking for their local loyalty cards. And I think within a week or two, I've got like 3,000 downloads. And I was like, okay, that's going somewhere. Let's do it. Let's do that. So I updated the app and I reached out to friends and family and I said, look, I'm getting 1-star reviews on it. Would you be able to use it and give me a positive feedback if you feel positive? And I updated the app and suddenly within a week, I got like 10,000 downloads, which is crazy. Like for me, like if getting 10,000. And now, after 3 months, we have almost 50,000 people using the app every single day, all across the world. And some people would say, oh, this is a fluke. You just got it overnight and it's done. But I think that is because of the consistency, keep learning across how things work. And then obviously a small factor of luck was involved there because I was having this conversation with my girlfriend. So I think you're spot on. Grit is something which you have to have, consistency, which is you have to, focus on when you want to build something out of your expertise. Um, as you know, John, we are limited of time, and I also have to cover the last section, which is the quick fire round in our show. But before we go into that round, I wanted to ask you something. Throughout your journey and experience, there must have been valuable lessons learned. If you don't mind sharing, could you reflect on your experience and tell us about one mistake or a setback that you encountered along the way that you now consider not a regret, but a lessons learned? And additionally, what advice would you give our listeners based on this experience?
I would share two things. One, people will not pay their invoices. So I have been left in my marketing agency. I was left with so much bad debt, so much bad debt. In an industry that's quite common, you set up a business to launch the project. It's project specific, and then if you can't pay the bills, zoop, project, it's gone, and you never recover the money. And for a business that's turning over a few million, for any business, it's a massive impact. And emotionally, it's horrendous because you're looking at having to cover that debt by losing staff members. Horrendous. So protect yourself as much as you can in that sense. Have great finances in place. The other thing I would say, and again, I acknowledge this has been my mistake, is that I was so keen to build my first business and that it was my business, my creation, my vision, that I created what was hugely successful commercially, but that all paths came back to me. And that's not uncommon in the founder space at all. And it's why I share it as a piece of advice that actually you don't need to do that. And my struggle was when I was really ready to grow, it was very hard to find partners who really wanted to work in that environment where I had built a business that really everything ultimately came back to me. And then I would get frustrated when everything came back to me. So that would be a huge lesson. And it's certainly something that as I move forward with my new business, on-sale group, that I avoid. And so an on-sale group is all about community. So it isn't about
Mm,
any single person. It's about scale and reach of a global community who work like me across events and experiences. So that would
mm.
be two tough lessons that I've learned that I would pass on.
Good one. Thank you for that. Um, yeah, and I couldn't agree more with you on building a community around your business because um, big businesses, trillion-dollar businesses, Nike, Tesla, they all have communities around their brand, and these are the loyal customers, loyal fans of your brand, which keeps coming back, and then potentially your whole kingdom is because of them. They have helped building the whole brand, uh, getting together in the community. So definitely, community is one of the best thing to build around your brand. So Don, thank you so much for sharing these insightful information. We have got a quick fire round where I got 6 quick fire questions for you. At any moment you don't want to answer, just give me a skip, and then we can move to the next one. They're quite straightforward questions. You might have touched a little bit on some of them already. Yeah, just yeah, if you're ready, we can start.
Hit me up. Go.
Great stuff. Question number one: what are the top 3 strategies to generate leads, traction to your business in 2025?
You need to get out there. Number one, paid advertising and great searchable content from an AI searchable perspective.
Indeed, indeed. Some people started coining this term called generative search engine optimization. I don't know if it is generative or GSO or something like that, but I've heard about it. So
Yep.
definitely that's one of the things. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
I would recommend The Alchemist because, oh, honestly, whenever I'm confused about what to do next, I read that book and I may not have the answers, but it's such a beautiful, reassuring read. So, yes, The Alchemist.
Yeah, when I read it first time, I was blown away because I'm a story person. I love stories, and I kind of tried to repaint the whole story to my little cousins and sisters. They liked it, and I'm glad that one of them I inspired to read the book. So definitely a good read. So go for it. What one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Would say the only one you need is grit. When all
Mm,
else falls away, the ones that keep going are the ones that will be successful. And I call that grit.
definitely, definitely. What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
Coffee? No. A a deadline. I mean, I'm quite traditional in that sense. Give me a really clear deadline. And I will, I have a fear about missing a deadline. And that could be, picking a child up from school or delivering the piece of work. I'm very time conscious and respectful of people's time. So I would say caffeine, but also a clear deadline.
Definitely. I follow the Harvard's time boxing methodology myself. So everything is my calendar. I basically wake up and go to sleep based on my calendar. So that's non negotiable. So one of the good ones. Great. What's a new or crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had time?
Glorious question. This probably goes back to purpose and things that I'm passionate about. So I I would love to do something with animals. It would only hemorrhage money if I'm honest. That I've looked at it several times, and as soon as you start wanting to save animals and look after them, it's just like you just become a charity, and then you struggle to raise money. So something with animals, but I don't quite have the answer for what it is.
Yeah, yeah. You love. I love dogs. So I think when I want to do something, I will do something around, taking care of them in a better way. Something around the lines. But yeah, good one. Last but not least, what's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
Oh, well, I would say that I spent my early 20s training to be a professional dancer. That was all I wanted to
Hmm.
do from about the age of 4, as I've hinted at. And whilst I work in, a sort of a parallel industry, I suppose, to that now, I don't think you would expect that of me. But what I would say for any parents listening who have children who enjoy performing or dancing, music, singing, any of the above, encourage it, you not because you want them to perform, but actually because the foundations, the ability to hold a conversation, the ability to grow confidence, soft skills, the ability to present, to pitch in the future, all of that you will teach them at a really young age through all of these arts. And if you can teach that, they will have a beautiful and rosy future, and they'll be able to pitch to investors when they're in their 20s.
Great stuff. Don, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story, unpacking the years of building this business. If people want to get in touch with you or if they want to check it out, what's the best way to do that?
So, if you are working in sales and marketing and communications globally in some way, head to www.onsale.live and you'll find out lots of things about the business. If you are thinking more about how do you market things, head to my website, dawnfarrow.com, to learn more about what I do.
Great stuff. Well, Don, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing through helping people to understand how the sales and marketing works. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.